Welcome to the Prosper Project, the show that helps entrepreneurs build brands that impact the world and the bottom line. We know that success doesn't come in a one-size-fits-all package. That's why we're bringing you adaptable marketing strategies along with valuable insights from inspiring change makers, firebrands, and visionaries. I'm Lorraine Sugart, founder of the disruptive brand agency Prosper for Purpose. Now for this week's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session of the Prosper Project. Today, I'm really excited to have as my guest Lindsay LaShell. Lindsay is the founder of Open Lines, which was a marketing agency and now is a marketing consultancy. She is also a B Corp founder and leader within the We the Change movement. So Lindsay and I have known each other for a year or so, I would say, and you're really going to enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thanks so much for having me, Lorraine.
Yeah, my pleasure. So tell people a little bit about Open Line, how you started it, and what kind of services you offer.
Yeah, I love being a consultant. Can I just tell you, I have the right temperament for being able to tell my clients something they maybe don't want to hear. I have the right temperament. I love the Gallup strengths as a tool for helping understand where you should be or what you should be doing. And I'm an activator. That's one of my strengths. And so enrolling people, getting people fired up about a thing is something I really love to do. And so the thing that I do is to help solve marketing for my clients so that they can solve more important problems, right? I work with lots of underestimated founders, queer, BIPOC folks, nonprofits, B Corps, anybody whose success makes the world a better place. They are less likely to have a lot of money to invest, and so more likely to benefit from a really smart marketing strategy. And so that's what I help them do.
I love it. That was really, really powerful.
Thank you.
So tell us, why did you decide, or how did you decide to become an entrepreneur? Is that something that you always aspired to?
I feel like I avoided it for as long as I possibly could. When I think about my 20s and my 30s, I had a lot of opportunities to start businesses. I was had a tutoring business when I was in grad school, stuff like that. And I just never really took advantage of the opportunities there. So I call myself a reluctant entrepreneur because when I finally did start my marketing agency, I was in this position where I had worked for a couple of marketing agencies in a row that were really toxic. I was married to somebody who was underemployed, chronically underemployed our entire relationship. So I was the breadwinner. And I was just at my end. I couldn't find a job. I was literally taking Ativan to get through my workday and then Trazodone to be able to sleep at night. I was just a wreck. And I finally got to this point where I was I went to my boss and I pitched him. I said, I want to build a content offering. We can do because I was at that time, I had been drinking the HubSpot Kool-Aid, and I really, no shade, I still love HubSpot, but just as a recovering content farmer, I had done SEO back when it was not actually a really good thing for users, right? I had worked for a content farmer. And so I was sort of had this idea of what really good content marketing could be, a service to the business and a service to customers. And so I went to my boss at the time and I said, I want to build a content marketing team inside of the agency. We were mostly building websites and stuff at the time. And he said, no, he said, you're never going to have more power or more influence. He's I'd rather not have the money that you would make me on that case because I don't want you to grow in this business, in this agency.
Are you kidding me?
Straight up. And I was okay. At that point, I was completely in survival mode, And there was another time where he told me I was a rabble rouser.
Oh my gosh, no one can see our faces right now, but this is one of those we talked about before we started. This is why I keep this on audio, because if listeners could see my face right now, my mouth is literally hanging open. I cannot believe that.
I had some very classic. Like, I wasn't a feminist until I was convinced by the treatment of my bosses that there was a problem because I was a woman. Like, I'll give you so the other toxic boss, actually, he would do this thing where I would write the proposal, I would write the project scope, and then he would present it to the client without me in the room as if it was his own work. So this was where I was from. It was when shit like that started happening to me all the time, then I was like, I only want the opportunity that I deserve, right? But I wasn't getting that. And so that was when I started to put the pieces together that this is not about the quality of my work. This is about something else entirely. And that was when I really started to look at things. And honestly, I didn't become a feminist until my late 30s after I started seeing all this. Well,
you experienced why feminism was a thing, This didn't come about because women were treated equally or even with respect for what they contributed. It was created as a reaction to the fact that we were put in boxes. That's astounding to me because you are significantly younger than I am. And this is what's sad, because I do remember having my daughters and thinking, well, at least by the time that they grow up, they won't have to experience what I'm experiencing. And if anything, it's worse. In a lot of ways, I feel like it's worse. And that's a whole subject for another day, because I want to talk about you and what you do today. But let me just say that I hear you, I acknowledge you, and I'm sorry for you and for anyone that has to go through that. I will tell you a quick aside, and then we will move on. I'm proud of this now, but I didn't talk about this for years and years. When I was looking for my first job out of college, I was not standing in my power and very strong. I was still kind of insecure, and I was a slight extrovert, but only around people I knew. So I went for an interview with an agency, and the owner came out to the lobby and sat down next to me and asked me a bunch of questions. And the whole time I'm thinking, is he taking me back to an office or what's happening? And then he said, well, you're probably wondering why we're sitting here. And I said, yeah, I was kind of curious. And he said, it's because this is where you'd be working. And I said, excuse me? I thought that I can't even remember what the title was, but it was something like account coordinator, right? It was a very entry-level position. And he points to the reception desk. And I said something like, I thought it was an account coordinator. And his response to me was, wait for it, all my girls start here. And I don't know who took possession of my body, because you know what I said? I looked at him and I said, where do your boys start?
Nice.
And his mouth dropped open, kind of like mine did. And then he immediately had this really offended face.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything else about the interview
No,
other than it came to a close quickly. I left and never heard from that agency again. I mean,
you should be so proud of yourself. That's so ballsy.
I am now. At the time, I was like, who said that? But I was so offended.
Appropriately so.
Yeah. And this was the 80s. I've got to confess. It was a long time ago, but still.
So yeah, I was in a tough spot. I was trying to figure out my situation, and I had one client that my network had yielded that had actually followed me from one agency to the next. And I went to him and I said, I'm thinking about going out on my own. And he said, I'll be your first client. It was a ride. I was really, really, really proud of that business. It was fun.
And so was that the first version of Open Lines, or was that a different? Okay, it was.
Yeah, it was. It was actually, so the agency brand was Diamond and Branch Marketing Group, which I get to tell the story very often. So I'll tell you where the came from. In my thinking about what I wanted to do as content marketer, I sort of took this visual metaphor. So people would think diamond was something very luxurious or expensive or whatever. And I'm like, no, this is very practical, because if your brand is good, it should be transparent and it should be multifaceted. Right? It needs to be absolutely authentic from beginning to end. But also, if you're going to be effective, it's okay to show different sides to different audience members at different times, right? So I was like, the diamond is your brand. The branch is that it should be connected to everything else, and it should be measured for fruitfulness. And so those are sort of the four, like I had this really, really beautiful little office in San Diego, and we had those four words: transparent, multifaceted, connected, and fruitful. And that became very much like the way that we thought about our work and our relationships with each other. And it was lovely.
That's really profound and beautiful. So what led you away from that agency to where you are now?
Oh, so many life lessons and a pandemic. So basically, I had in the fall of 2019, I had 10 employees. We were increasing our office space. We were growing like crazy. I was like, had like really, really great clients, good monthly retainers. I was happy. Like this was the business I was trying to build. And then employee number one and employee number two, who have both worked for me for over 3 years, close to 4 years, which I'm like so proud of that too. Like it's a coup to have young people working for you that long, but their abilities were outpacing what we could offer, right? So right for them to move on. And I take it as a great compliment. They gave me 3 months notice. So like October, they tell me they're leaving at the end of the year, right? So great. So I do what is kind of my natural reaction to this thing, which is to like grab my laptop and run away to Palm Springs. I'm like, I lived in San Diego, like the business was in San Diego, and I was like, run away to the desert as sort of my coping mechanism. And so I took myself on an executive retreat and sort of like did a lot of like blue sky, because I can't replace them for what I pay them. And I feel like all business owners who hire young people know, like we all go through this, right?
Yes, I went through that. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm like trying to figure out like, what's the size and shape? Do I want to change my offering? Do I want to like, where, just sort of like blue sky. And I realized that like running this agency isn't actually the job that I want. What I actually want to be doing is more teaching, more speaking, more engagement with the strategy, less management of the team. I want to do more writing. So I sort of acknowledged all those things. And I was just like, well, whatever, like, I'm not going to fire the rest of these employees and clients. So like, I need to keep going in this direction. So here I go. And then it turned out that wasn't up to me, because staff turnover led to client turnover. I made a bad hire. So I lost a bunch of money and a bunch of client goodwill. Like I was just like all these. And then we lost 80% of our monthly recurring revenue from February to April 2020.
Oh my gosh.
Because not only did we have we had a good spread of clients, but in San Diego, we also had a good concentration of hospitality clients. So for them, it was like a no-brainer, like they had to shut down. And so summer of 2020, I'm like quixotically sort of hustling to try to find agency clients, and nobody's signing 6-figure content marketing retainers. It's like, but the conversations I'm having are people who are saying right now is actually a great moment because I've got time. So I can do it, but I need a plan. I need somebody to help me figure out like how to prioritize what I should be doing. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. As an agency owner, one of my priorities was accountability to my clients. Was really uncomfortable with some of the practices I'd seen at other agencies. It was like, we'll just take all your money, produce a bunch of ads, and then like, so long and thanks for all the fish. Like, I really hope that works for you. And that just didn't sit right with me. And content marketing is a grind, right? You have to constantly optimize. And so I had set up this framework to build consensus between myself, my client, myself, the strategist, my clients, and the team that was executing. And it was really useful because it could help us sort of when the client comes and says, oh, we want to do X, Y, or Z, we can be like, yeah, that doesn't fit the strategy. So we're not going to do that. Or yes, that's a great idea. And let's, so it was a really, really powerful tool. And I had been teaching it as a workshop already for like small and new nonprofits. Right? When you're a nonprofit that has a 1-person marketing team or less than that, right? A distributed marketing team where it's like the ED writes the newsletter and the receptionist does the social media and like, right? We all know these.
Yes, we know them.
But the way that you prioritize and execute on those channels has a huge impact on whether or not they serve your organization in a measurable way, right?
Yes.
One of the things that I say all the time, specifically about nonprofits, is like, good marketing is not overhead. Only bad marketing is overhead.
That's right.
And so when nonprofit leaders get that in their heads, I'm like way off on this other ranty tangent.
No, that's okay. Yeah. You and I speak the same language. I love it.
So anyway, people asked for marketing strategy in just all by itself. And I was like, oh, that's the thing I can do. I was an elementary school teacher in a past life, and I love to teach and I love to coach. And so,
And you don't need a big team for that.
yeah,
You don't need any team necessarily.
I mean, that's the thing. So I basically I took that framework, I set up a consulting experience, consulting model around it, shopped it around. Like my first 5 calls, 3 of them closed.
That's brilliant.
So that's what I've been doing ever since then. I do it in a few different formats, but it's fundamentally like I have a network. If I'm working with a client that doesn't want to or can't do the things that we've planned for them, then I introduce them to freelancers or agency partners or whatever. I don't do anything except for help them to recognize the opportunity and prioritize how to attack it.
That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about who you work with.
Oh, the best clients. I love my clients. That's the things I say this all the time too. I don't give up marketing. That is so not what I'm here for. Marketing is a tool, right? And so all of my clients are making the world a better place in some meaningful way. And the best part about it is I get to decide what that means. I work with B Corps, I work with nonprofits, I work with social enterprises, and I work with underestimated founders. So one of the things that is common as I'm looking at my options, if you're a cishet white dude, then you got to come to me with something better than an idea. I need social impact. I need meaning. I need purpose. You need to be doing something bigger than just running a business. But if you're a Black woman, as long as you're not selling oil or drilling for oil or selling guns or something like that, I don't care what you do to enrich yourself. That is social good all by itself, right? And so that attitude opens a lot of doors for me. And so I get to work with some really, really amazing. This year, I've gotten to work with the Halcyon Incubator in Washington, D.C. And
that's amazing.
Absolutely wonderful entrepreneurs there doing really, really cool things. I've worked with Zane Partners based in Atlanta, also focusing on Black entrepreneurs, amazing. I'm doing a project with the American Heart Association right now where they're paying me to teach some of their sponsored projects, both for-profit and nonprofit, about how to be a little bit more efficient with marketing. So yeah, it's a blast. I love it.
I love that. So my next question, being a business owner, is some of those clients can pay you probably really well and others cannot. So if I'm an underestimated entrepreneur, how do I think about what it looks like to work with you? Should I even bother reaching out? Talk a little bit about that, because as a business owner, we all struggle with that, right?
Yeah, it is. So I have some things I have planned and some things that are now. So right now, I'm a huge advocate for a sliding scale pricing model. And I've played with a few different versions of it, but that's what I do. So I'm super straightforward in one-on-one consulting. There has to be a floor on the price point for me, right? And so, but every time I sell that work to an organization that has a few $1 million a year in revenue, then that balances out something that I can do for an organization that is pre-revenue, right? So that's one of the things that I do, but that's still pretty high price point. It's still, 5 figures. But then I have online courses. I have small group courses, right? The marketing on purpose cohort is a few $1,000s because it's a very small group. It's only 6 entrepreneurs working together.
Okay. And how long do you work with them?
It's a 10-week program. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. It's like taking a college course.
I mean, it's basically this is the thing that I've realized is because the outcome is not just oh, now you have a marketing plan. It's the outcome is now you know how to think about marketing. It will change if you, it changes the way that you conceive of what marketing can do for your organization and how to handle it. And so it's not just it's really good for entrepreneurs that are just starting out. And my favorite thing, I have a client that I worked with last fall that we did the strategy. Then they went out and raised $500,000. And then they came back to me and said, we need your help implementing it. And so now I'm doing a fractional CMO gig with them to install vendors and onboard software and do all these things. And so, yeah, that's incredibly rewarding when I get to see my clients turn around. I have another, a nonprofit client that they paid me and it was a lot of money for them at the time. They were an all volunteer organization at the time that they rallied to pay my fee. But they turned it around and quadrupled it by the end of the week. We worked together for a week And they were like, because the marketing plan is so well considered, like the assets that we create are so thoughtful. They took it back to one of their high net worth donors and was like, we're going to need $25,000 to execute on this plan. And she was like, here's your check. Go do it.
See, that's so amazing. We've all been there. And I know I have nonprofit listeners. If you're a nonprofit that has this great marketing plan or branding plan, I've done branding plans where, then you turn around and they're like, this is great. We don't have any funds to implement it. And we don't really have anyone who's high level enough. We thought we'd be able to get the funding. It is one of those things where you can go to your donors. You can go back to foundations that gave you the original grant and say, this is what it looks like. It's great, but it's a framework. It's a foundation. It's not something that's going to move the needle unless we take it out of the package, right? You can get 4 new tires for your car. But if they sit in your garage, they're not going to get you anywhere.
Exactly.
And that is an issue. So I love what you're saying. I feel like you and I are very similar in a lot of the ways that you've talked about how you look at it. We do something that we call value pricing, but it's the value to the organization, which is really another way of thinking about a sliding scale. But what you're saying just really, really resonates with me. So you were a full service agency. Now you're a consultancy and education based. And tell us a little bit about how you've come up with your offers and how people can kind of self-select to learn more about you and what would be a good fit for them depending on where they are.
Yeah. So I am working hard to make everything as accessible as possible. So I'm like halfway through writing a book that will be sort of like workbookish, like self-guided, right? So like obviously that's a way more accessible price point. I have some online courses, and my intention is by the end of the year, actually, that I will have my full consulting sort of model online for self-serve courses as well. So like both of those things are obviously like a lot more accessible from price point. But really, I find that my clients sort of come in like three different flavors, right? There's like the very, very early stage, like we we're talking about, like 1-person marketing team, or even like solopreneur, like something like that, where it's like oftentimes it's pre-revenue. And that person doesn't know what they don't know about marketing and doesn't have time to waste on marketing that doesn't work, and maybe feels a little bit, this is an interesting one because this is where a lot of coaching comes in, maybe feels a little sheepish about promoting themselves or their ideas or their business. And for those organizations, like my framework basically empowers them it gives them the freedom and the confidence that what they're doing is the right thing for their business. And they can feel a little bit, they can be okay about the self-promotion. They can be okay about how they spend their time with it. The second category is like that same business, like 5 years later, where they've got a few staff, they've got a few wins, but they know that like what got them here is not the thing that's going to get them where they want to go. Right. So that's like the next round, the next level up. And then the third sort of category of clients that I work with, often nonprofits, but they can be for-profits too. And these are organizations where product and services, or product and communications, or programs and communications are separate. And so they find there's a lot of inefficiencies in their marketing process. I can tell by your face, this is a familiar experience for you.
Yeah. Well, I've worked within a lot of nonprofits. And so I was a self-appointed silo buster because and even in a corporate setting, I was in a corporation where I made it my mission to friend and partner with people that were in the department, but were considered the arch nemesis of the marketing department. It was so crazy. I'm like, I'm not playing by these rules.
Yeah, it's that kind of shit is so weird. So one of the things, I'm an efficiency freak. I hate waste. And especially in a nonprofit where like we have better things to do. Like that money, those resources, our time is really precious. And in related, but not immediately relevant, is also just the way that nonprofits often demand so much more from their staff than they give them, right? It can be really exploitative working at a nonprofit. And so that's part of what I work with my clients. So the marketing framework, the strategy, centers your audience. It thinks very carefully about what your channel strategy is and how you should prioritize and execute it. And what that does is basically preload consensus on all kinds of things. So now we all have tools so that if there's a request from comms, whoever's making that request understands what kind of information comms needs before they're going to do the thing. So that when they do the thing, it doesn't have to be edited and reviewed and revised and rewritten over and over and over again until it has no personality and no branding and no effectiveness left in it, right? Like we all need to like get on board with like, this is what we agreed, this is how it's going to go, and let comms do their jobs.
Right. I love that. You actually teach delegation, or you're working on teaching delegation, right?
Yeah, no. So I've got an online course right now, and I'm about to start a social media season where I've recorded a bunch of videos and I'm going to be like releasing them. Yeah, delegation, I feel like, especially for women leaders and for people of color, it's so hard to be a good delegator if you can't be honest about power.
Talk more about that.
Well, I'll speak for myself. I imagine this is going to resonate. Like, I was taught not to be powerful. I was taught soft power, right?
Yeah.
But really what it is like passive aggressive garbage. And so when somebody doesn't do something that they promised to do, then we're like, oh, but we're like afraid to follow up and ask for it. And we're like, there's just all these different ways where, because no one is taught how to communicate proactively and help in delegation, right? Like it's just not a thing.
That's true.
No one is taught that, but white dudes are perfectly comfortable understanding that they're in control and that they have the power. Like whatever, I'm generalizing, but like really it's a very different cultural expectation of how we are supposed to communicate in those moments.
So true. And when you break out of that mold, we see what happens. You're called a rebel or a problem person or
rabble rouser.
That's it.
Exactly. And so that's the thing of like, so a healthy delegation practice starts with an acknowledgement that like the asker has a certain amount of power and the doer has a certain amount of power. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be honest about that. Like the asker is asking for the thing. They get to decide whether or not it's done according to what they asked for. Mm-hmm. But the doer is the one who gets to decide when it gets done and how it gets done. That's the way that my script sort of empowers everybody to collaborate proactively and in like healthy, respectful ways. So if you don't have a healthy, respectful environment where you can talk to each other, then you have way bigger problems. But once you're in a place where like you have a healthy relationship with the people that you work with, this only makes it better because it's proactive. And honestly, from the point of view of a manager, of a business leader, one of the things I love about it is that like when people don't deliver on the delegation, there is no confusion about how or why that happened.
Interesting.
And so it actually becomes an amazing tool for getting people, like for understanding why people are not performing according to expectations.
Love
because
that.
See it so clearly. It's documented so clearly that if there's somebody who like continues to be a problem, you can tell the difference between somebody who is like passing the buck and making excuses and somebody who's doing the best they can and they're not in the right role. Like you can it all becomes very visible very easily. And so that's just, I mean, it's worth so much money. It's worth so much time and heartache to business leaders, you know?
Yeah. So I have to say, first of all, I think this is really, really important what you're talking about. And I also have to note that this is not about marketing. And so right. Just to come full circle and talk about the fact that marketing just happens to be one of your entry point. It's what you're really, really good at. It's a great entry point, but your work is not about marketing. Your work is about impact and helping people make the impact that they need to make in the world. And that's something that you and I have in common. It's just that our ways that we deliver that is a little bit different. But I love this conversation. And I have to ask you about one more topic that people are going to find provocative. So you did a presentation for We the Change. And just as a reminder, although I've talked about that group a lot on this podcast, We the Change is a group of women CEOs of certified B Corps. And we have an organization where we come together and we move forward certain objectives that are important to the group. So when we were in lockdown, Lindsay did a presentation on walking away from social media.
Mhm.
And are you incorporating that now into something that your business offers as well?
It's a little bit of a side note on
Okay.
strategy. It's a part of what I work with my clients on when it's
Okay.
appropriate, but it's like one of these things, like another thing I tell my clients and I coach my clients into making marketing plans based on the belief that people don't read, right? Like we're going to spend a lot of time talking about your brand and your voice and your channel strategy and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm really sorry to tell you, but people don't read. And so that's like, the good news is that means that we can reuse the same stories, because the worst thing that happens is we start to look consistent. People start to remember what we're
They have to
talking
see
about.
it like 6-10 times
I
anyway
know.
before they remember. They already saw it.
Exactly. But that's the thing, is like, nobody's going to remember. And especially when you're talking about like case study data or any of that, nobody.
Yeah.
And so, but as women, as people of color, we have this idea that like every single social media post has to be novel and perfect and adorable and like absolutely resonant. And we need to let ourselves off the hook in a really big way. That's right. I could turn that into a 45-minute class on how to do it, why to do it, etc. So as an example, so then this social media thing came along where I just kept finding myself looking at clients being like, hold on, you're spending hours a week creating this content. You're getting no engagement on the content. Not your fault, by the way. I got a whole problem with these algorithms.
Yeah.
So you're getting no authentic engagement on these posts. You cannot trace any impact of that time investment on your business, on your organization. Let's take a step back and talk about how we can do that, how we can realign your time with something that is more impactful on your business. And so the idea behind what I call the social media solution is turn your social media channels into landing pages. So, and I have a bunch of clients. I did this, like if you go look at open lines on Instagram, you will see like a 9-square grid. It's designed to be permanent. It literally says, go find us on LinkedIn.
Interesting.
That's where I'm active. So if anybody goes to look for me there, what do they get? They get an acknowledgement that I am present. They get an overview of my business and my aesthetic, and they get a call to action to go find me somewhere else where I am actually, right? We can all do that.
Right.
And then I have to invest in my Instagram once a year instead of every day or a few times a week, whatever. And so that's where I think I love to be that very, very, very practical voice for my clients, where I can take us out of random acts of marketing, right? I can take us out of, I'm doing it because it looks like the thing or feels like the thing I should be doing. And instead just gut check reality. What do you actually need? What's actually going to serve you in your business? And like, let's prioritize those things.
That is so good. So you help your clients prosper. You help them evolve. This is called the Prosper Project. I love talking to leaders for whom prosperity looks different. And so I always end my podcasts with a question: what does it mean for you to prosper? Not your business, but you individually. So Lindsay, can you answer that last and final question?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm a connector. I have a nature that makes it easier for me to give away than to collect. And so prosper for me is when I don't have to have any boundaries around my giving, whatever that is, whether it's my time or my sources or my, like that's what it looks like to me.
That is really one of the best answers I've heard. And it's very unusual. And it's also very you. I really, really appreciate you sharing your insight and wisdom. And where can people find you?
Yeah. So open-lines.co is my website. You can learn all about my offerings and courses and all that kind of stuff there. But really, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So just Google, go search for Lindsay LaShell on LinkedIn. The Google is really kind to me because I've been on the internet for a very long time, and the other Lindsay LaShells in this country are not active on the internet. Okay.
Well, that's good. We will have links to your LinkedIn and your website and your Instagram in the comments section.
Oh, you know what? Can I promote one other thing?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm super excited in my role with We the Change. We just had a meeting. The rest of this year, we are going to be focused on pay equity. And our goal is going to be to empower all of our member organizations to level up into best practices for pay equity. And then we're going to turn around and empower them to empower the greater business community. We've got advocacy projects going on with this. This is our project for the next 6 months. And if any of your listeners are thinking that this is a thing they need to do, it's open. It's not just members. We're going to have a lot of stuff that's available to everybody. Guest speakers, resources, templates, coaches, like we're really committed to this thing. So I just want to plug that because I think it's really important.
Yeah, well, what I will do is share the We the Change. It's wethechange.net if anyone's listening wants to go right now, but I'll put that link in the show notes as well. And people can go there. You can sign up to get on our email list, and then you'll be first to receive notice of what's happening. So that's great. I did not know that. I recently rolled off of leadership. I'm glad that there's so many amazing people still on the leadership team, and I will be checking that out myself soon. Well, thanks for being here with me today, Lindsay. It was really lovely speaking with you. And thanks to all our listeners for tuning in as we talk about marketing and all kinds of other good things for growing businesses and creating positive impact in our world. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Prosper Project. If you want to grow a peerless, profitable brand, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you find value in our show, please help us reach others by sharing an episode and leaving a review. In appreciation, please visit prosperforpurpose.com for more free resources to help you grow your business.